because we've done it in this format on Teams so that we could see the panel at all times as we're talking to them. And I just wanted to say before we start, can I ask that unless you're on the panel, that everybody turns the camera off, please, and mutes their microphone, just so that we can make the most of the time we have with the panel today. That's great. Looks super. Okay, well, to make the most of the hour, I think we'll just kick off. So I want to say welcome to our Alumni Careers panel on sustainable development. Thank you to the panel for joining us today. That's Salvatore Coppola-Finegan, Lucy Godshall, and Benjamin Ong. Apologies, hopefully I've got all the pronunciations right. If I haven't, then that's absolutely down to me. Thank you all for joining us today on what is the first day of a great alumni weekend with students and alumni attending virtually from across our St Andrews global community. My name is Karen Hall and I'm the Assistant Director for Opportunities based at St Andrews within the Career Centre. Our alumni offer their time in this way is not only a fantastic way to hear directly about their individual journeys since leaving the university, but also a great way for those of you out there who want to follow in their footsteps to ask those questions that have been on your mind, plus those that are just interested generally in the subject matter. It's lovely to have you here. We're very fortunate in the community that we have and how engaged our alumni are, and we really appreciate you all joining us today for those on and off camera. This session is in partnership with our development team. And today, as it is a weekend of alumni and students, no one wants to hear from me. So I'm delighted that we have a current student, Deanna Coleman, who's volunteered to represent our wonderful students and lead the discussion today. And I make no apologies, I'm just about to share a little bit about Deanna and all of her achievements before we head in. So Deanna's currently completing her MA Hons, and I'm more than happy to share, as I said, some of what she's been doing in recent years. She's written the original proposal for the St Andrews Forest, a carbon offsetting project for the university's unavoidable Scope 3 emissions, first of its kind in the UK. Subsequently led a team under our seed branding workshop in carbon management and sustainable curriculum design. The workshop taught students carbon literacy, and then they were split off into groups to design a module that they'd like to take at St Andrews. She sits on the Environmental Sustainability Board, working on the university's sustainable strategy for net zero by 2035. And this actually led to a wider student group working on sustainability starter packs for incoming students and creating a new environmental reward system. And in a spare time, she is also political editor of Unearth, creator of the Green Sport Group, public speaker for Greenpeace, and a host on our radio show, Sustainable Saints. And as we'd all like to share here, is heading to Columbia University in June to do a master's in environmental science and policy. So we're just excited that Deanna's been able to join us today with our wonderful alumni panel as well. So in light of all the experience we have on the panel and our experienced student that we have with us, I'll be making myself useful and covering the text chat box. So I do encourage everybody that's attending today to type any questions that you might have for our panel. And what we'll do is once Deanna has gone through her questions with the panel, she will look down. If we have time, fingers crossed we do, and we will pose the additional questions to the panel. Please note that anything we don't have time to cover today, the panel have kindly said that they'll answer offline and we can then publish later. So we'd like to kick off things today by asking each of the panel to take 5 minutes to introduce themselves, please, just to set the scene. So if I can start off with Salvatore.
So first and foremost, thank you very much to the Alumni Office and the Careers Centre and Deanna for all the organisation that's gone into the behind the scenes of this event. It's a real honour and a pleasure to be back at St Andrews, albeit in a virtual manner at the moment, and to share some of the experience that I've had since graduating in 2008. So my academically speaking, my career started at St Andrews as a half classicist, half linguist. And since then, I've done a very many of other things that haven't always had anything to do with classics and languages. So I think the first point that I'd like to make is that I'm very happy to share my experience with you here about how a career can be characteristically interdisciplinary and non-linear. And I think that these two aspects really fit into the discussion of our topic on sustainable development. For example, I've been involved from a very early stage at a very local and direct impact community level in sustainable development projects, access to water, human rights, sustainable agriculture and energy projects, and from there have built up a portfolio of projects which led me into international development projects in Latin America, where I spent almost 10 years since graduating from St. Andrews, which led me onto then a higher level at a policy analysis and governmental level as a chief advisor to the head of the government bench in the National Parliament of Costa Rica, which is a country that I'm sure those of you who know about the topic of sustainable development it's a leader at a UN and international level. And I've been at the heart in that government of the energy plan for the next 15 years, and also dealing with other development topics such as sustainable fisheries, energy policy, transport. For example, I drafted the current law in Costa Rica of cycling safety. And then since then, back to Europe and various more experiences in the private sector, apart from being a startup entrepreneur back in the day in a very non-sustainable development sector, which was the petrochemical and oil and gas, but this was 2008, 2009. And then I since moved into in the private sector in business development in the digital sector, software development in Germany. So I experienced another culture, another experience, another type of way of life. And the green thread that's run through things has always been this capacity to adapt. So as an introduction, I'd say that what's taken me to what I'm doing right now currently has been this interdisciplinary capacity that I really lived when I was at St. Andrews. And right now, currently, what I'm working on in the private sector in Southeast Asia, in Thailand mostly, development projects and using the UN SDGs as the guiding principles. And in the public sector, I'm advising and consulting, and I will be partaking in government delegation at the COP climate conference, which hopefully will be held in presence, whether it's November this year or early next year, who knows yet, in Glasgow in Scotland. Yeah, so that's the green thread that takes us to today.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Salvatore. And I know after we complete today, there's lots happening on COP at St Andrews as well. So we look forward to discussing lots more about that later as well. And over to Lucy now. Thank you.
Hi, Kim. Thank you, and thanks all. I just ditto what Salvatore is saying about the honor of being back here at St. Andrews virtually. I'm a 2013 graduate from St. Andrews. I studied economics and medieval history. Who knew I would end up in sustainable development? But I'm now a senior manager at EY, Ernst & Young, in their climate change and sustainability consulting practice. And I'm helping large corporations manage their environmental, social, and governance impacts. So ESG, which is quite a buzzword in the sustainable development field right now. But I began my career in sustainability about 6.5 years ago. I studied environmental economics at St. Andrews as one of the first modules that kind of led me into the sustainable development arena. And I was sold from that class, and I went on to do an MSc at the London School of Economics, looking at studying environmental economics and climate change. And I started as a climate policy analyst for the new climate economy. It's the flagship project for the Global Commission on the Economy and Climate. That was before I started at EY as one of their very first graduates. And I started in the London office. We're doing some incredibly innovative things around natural capital accounting, helping corporates think about and study, measure, and report on their environmental impacts. And that really just has expanded into a much wider definition of sustainability, from environmental sustainability to sustainability and ESG the way we see it today, covering a whole range of topics from climate change to social impact, human rights, gender equality, social justice. So it's a huge field, lots of opportunities. I actually moved to the US practice about 5 weeks ago. I'm in a very snowy Vermont right now, which is very different to sunny Scotland, as I understand it. But I'm focusing today on helping corporates develop their sustainability or ESG strategies, meet their net zero commitments, and report on their sustainability performance for their various stakeholders, for investors, regulators, their employees. Yeah, so just really happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
That's great, Lucy. Thank you. Really delighted to have you here. And yeah, the introductions are opening up whole other avenues of exploration. This is terrific. And over to you, Ben, please.
Thanks, Karen. So again, echoing Salvatore and Lucy, it's really a pleasure to be back. So, thanks to the Career Center Development Office, to St. Andrews for the invitation. I must say that I wasn't expecting to be back so soon. So I think three of us, I left the university most recently in 2017 upon completion of my master's. I trained as an ecologist in Malaysia and then dabbled in a whole lot of things ranging from teaching and photography to publishing and also working in a university botanic garden, doing community engagement and environmental education. And somewhere midway in that very non-linear career, as Salvatore put it earlier, I found some time to take a break and spend some time doing my master's in St. Andrews. And it offered me an opportunity to take a step back and reflect on where everything was going. And on that note, I'd just like to share some scenes from that year. And full disclosure, this photograph was taken pre-COVID. I think we wouldn't get to do those things these days. These are my classmates in the master's cohort of sustainable development. This is where I lived. This was a postgraduate building in Albany Park. I think it's been torn down now. It's probably being redeveloped right now when I left the university. There you go. That's me in a very, very familiar part of town. And that's the one of my favorite nooks to study in the university. That's the postgraduate reading room at Martha's Kirk. I don't know if it's still there. And that was replanting trees. And so you see the tree in the background, that's a kind of horizontal wind, right, that I think everyone remembers. And I haven't really had anything like that since coming back here. And I just checked the calendar. Actually, exactly 4 years ago this day, it was Easter Sunday. And this was the sunrise on East Sands on that day. Yeah, so a little bit of a nostalgic trip back there. But yeah, upon my return in 2017, I kind of gradually handed my work over to the next generation. I think we'll maybe have a chance to share a bit about that. Set up a social enterprise, did some public advocacy, and now I'm head of exploration at the Accelerator Lab, United Nations Development Program in Malaysia. So yeah, that's the kind of whirlwind. Back over to you, Karen.
Ben, that's just terrific, and thanks for the insight. And just to let you know, it's never too soon to come back to St. Andrews. We've already booked Deanna back and she's not left yet. So it's never too soon, and welcome back. So I'm just going to say thank you to the panel again. And now it's over to Deanna to explore a little further. Over to you, Deanna. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I mean, all of your journeys are so inspirational. I think the pandemic has been almost sort of a bit worrisome for a lot of students thinking about life after university, but the fact that you guys have all got so far within what, about 10 years maximum after graduating. So it really, I don't know, it's very inspirational, I think, as a student listening to that. Now, the first question I want to ask is about basically how St. Andrews affected your career. So I know, Salvatore, you talked about the interdisciplinary environment really helped you. Lucy, it was just purely like a module in environmental economics that helped you. Benjamin, you were heavily involved in the botanical gardens. So I want to ask how your time at the University of St. Andrews affected your career path. We'll start with, we'll go in the same order. So Salvatore, if you start first.
Thanks, Deanna. That's a lovely question, and I think it's something that we all probably hold close to our hearts. I think that really the experience helped me because it, as well as the interdisciplinary aspect that I was involved in and I participated in at the time, I didn't realize it then, but I do appreciate it a lot more now, because we're talking 2004 to 2008. This is pre-smartphone era. We are now in sustainability. So I've been working in this for what, more than 10 years now, I say. We're going towards more of a systems thinking mentality and not a silo mentality where we have the economists with the economists, the historians with the historians, the anthropologists with the anthropologists, and so on. And I think that that opportunity, town and gown opportunity at St. Andrews to really mingle and be in social events, academic events, mix lectures, be able to take modules from other career paths while you build your own honours programme, was an excellent opportunity to get you immersed into this interdisciplinary mode of thinking, which has now become the vogue, not just in academia, but also in business and policy making. So I think that would be the main aspect for me of the education at St. Andrews.
Lucy, yes, if we move on to you next.
I wholeheartedly agree, Salvatore. I think that the interdisciplinary nature of the St. Andrews education and social experience as well was fundamental to my career path and starting it and accelerating it. I study medieval history and, think, well, how does that relate to sustainability? But the incredible analytical thinking, that mindset to review, centuries old documentation and try to piece together what's happening or what happened back then. That is a fundamental skill of what I'm doing today. My writing skills as well, but equally all the societies that I was involved with, that prepared me incredibly well for this consulting career path that I've taken, which is essentially project-based work. So how do you juggle, your studies, your society work, your sports, and that has just been incredibly invaluable for my work as a sustainability consultant today. And to the systems idea, I see that happening in the corporate world as well, as we try to bring all the ecosystem players together, from the corporates, the investors, regulators, NGOs. And I think that it is that mindset that St. Andrews just really instills in each and one of its students that has allowed me to bring that thinking into my career.
Thank you so much, Lucy. If we just move on to Ben now.
Thanks again. I think this is going to happen a few times in this hour. I'm going to wholeheartedly agree with Salvatore and Lucy, and and I'm just going to add on to that by saying that I think, St. Andrews as a place was a wonderful, setting to develop my thinking, to develop ideas. And, this picture in the background says it all. St. Andrews is a very peaceful town. It's a very, very small town, still is, I think. And, so I've got friends who, went to much larger cities, for instance, and, you do get certain things in larger cities. Perhaps you get a, faster pace of life. Some people would argue that you might have better opportunities for networking and things like that. But I really think that being able to come to St. Andrews and, to have community, very small community, as Salvatore put it, the fact that you can actually reasonably meet most people in town, after a couple of years or so, even within a year. I think the kind of bonds that we were able to form, and just to be able to get under the skin of the town, was something that was really a rare opportunity. And I think because I came into it mid-career in that sense, it really was. I mean, I think it's still one of the best years of my life to be able to, take that step back and have a conducive space and community to help me, prepare for the next steps ahead. Yeah, that's my take.
Thank you so much. I mean, all of your answers are absolutely excellent. And I think it's really great because it's so unique to St. Andrews. It's not every single university in the UK that has this interdisciplinary context, and where the community and the students are so close, I guess, and there's so many projects you can get involved in. Like, this is a St. Andrews thing. And while Ben did mention, that it's a small town, it's actually quality and not quantity. And every single student, I think, does have something to offer. And I literally don't know one student that isn't involved in at least 3 different projects at the same time, and I think that's just so unique to St. Andrews. So that's really great to hear that you all think that St. Andrews definitely possess so many of the qualities, I guess, that has led to where you are today. So on that similar note, do you think that if you were to advise current students today, is there something that you could have done differently when you were back at university? Another project perhaps, or explored a different field? If we go in the opposite order this time, so we'll start with you, Ben.
I don't know if this is advice I would give to a current student, but I really think it's, if one thing I might have done differently was maybe to be a bit less conservative about spending money. It was at a time where I think I really was trying to kind of stretch the pound, and the exchange rate didn't help. But when I look back, I think I would have gone to more shows and performances, so tried out more activities or food, or traveled a bit more. I've heard this saying, like, you can make money later, but you can't turn back time. So yeah, that's from me.
I mean, in terms of what I would do differently at St. Andrews, or if I at university for current students, I think it would be to get involved in more things and just try it out. I didn't know about the sustainable development activities, extracurriculars. It wasn't something that I joined at that stage of my career. I wasn't really set on sustainability when I was at St. Andrews, and it was kind of a fluke to say that I got into it in the first place. But I actually remember interning at the Career Center, and figuring out, oh, what are the different career pathways that you can do? And I was kind of all over the place, like, oh, what do I do? I really liked this environmental economics course, but I didn't really know too much about it. So I would say advice for students, try as much as you can to figure out what you like and what you don't like as well. It's just as important to know what you're not interested in, I think. So give every extracurricular activity or society a shot, and really immerse yourself in all the great aspects of St. Andrews.
Wow, there's some really valuable advice and tips just now from Lucy and Ben, which I definitely agree with in principle and on paper as well. I think that one of the great things that I remember was the possibility to mix different aspects of life. So being able to have a student job on the side, being able to be involved in 3, 4, or 5 societies and take leadership in those societies, but also in events between societies, and just to bring ideas to the table and find a very healthy, thriving community, because people are in so close proximity, and there's a lot of interest in new ideas. So I'd say to take advantage of that even more, and just do let's say what we may have done, which was be involved in what we did, and then really don't be afraid to try out a new thing. I remember I did a 12-week Chinese course at the language center, just totally random. I never studied that before, and it's just these little drops in an ocean of experience that you can be in when you're at the university, because you have a great lifestyle, a campus kind of mentality in a town, right? A small town where you can get to know people, you can work, you can take action in society. And right now, I think that there's a much bigger opportunity than we had when we were there, perhaps, in terms of ability to organize at more scale. So it's not just depending on the social circles that you're in the lecture hall, or with the people you share housing with, or with the house party acquaintances, for example, but it's also because you now got the digital tools at our disposal, and the university is a lot more, let's say, up to speed as well in facilitating, providing the infrastructure to organize and for people to be able to participate in the university life. I think that it offers, let's say, a chance to play a bigger role in this huge global unifying project that we have right now, which is directly connected to sustainable development, which is the climate emergency. And St Andrews is, yes, we walk around and we see the bricks and we see the old centuries old buildings and we see the very little, let's say, small town mentality, but we know that we have a global impact. I remember that the prospectus for when I joined and applied, it said on the back, St Andrews, where world-class minds are made. That was the slogan at the time in 2002, 2003. And you really do realize that when you're organizing things, even if it's a dinner or a ball or these kind of social events, you realize that you have the opportunity to work with people who you know that in 20 years' time, they will be taking the lead on a global scale. So it's a great opportunity to get in at the shallow end and take it through the rest of your career.
Great, thank you so much for these like insightful comments. I think hopefully there are students currently listening to this and they can take that forward. You know, the fact that there is so much out there and we really are among some of the best minds, and we have to take advantage of that. So even as Lucy said, you know, that she didn't know what was there before, well, I think that by now it's increased heavily and there is so many more projects available than there probably was when you were at the university as well. So it's constantly increasing. There's always more to get involved in. Now, I really want to ask you about your careers, but before we do that, I'm going to quickly sort of stay on the topic of St Andrews and just let you and the audience know that we're currently, so the university currently has a small team exploring the possibility of a St Andrews forest, which is essentially a way to offset the unavoidable Scope 3 emissions at the university. So the students that fly in at the start and end of semester, like who have no option but to fly, so these are like, we obviously don't want them rowing across the Atlantic or cycling from Asia. So this is purely the students that have to fly. Their flights will be offset through our own carbon offsetting project, which is the St Andrews Forest. Now, this is still an initiative. It's still relatively hypothetical. But what we would like to ask you is, how do you think that a momentum for this can be maintained? So the beauty of this project was that it's a proposal created by students for the students. We don't want just the university throwing money at it and then the students not know what it's about. So what we really want to do is try and tackle the St Andrews Forest idea with as much student interest as possible, so that we can tackle, you know, the students that aren't involved in anything to do with climate change or don't even know what sustainable development is. So do the three of you have any advice on how we can sort of keep this momentum going behind the St Andrews Forest? Lucy, you're nodding, so I think I'll start with you. We'll move on to Salvatore and then over to Ben.
You know, I think it's fabulous that you guys have embarked upon this initiative. I see it, EY, we went on our journey for carbon neutrality, and it did start from that bottom-up approach. We had a group of consultants who were called eco-innovators, and they wanted to, you know, impact the planet and, you know, mitigate climate change. And one of the ways that they were doing that was to look at the business travel. You know, we're, as EY professionals, we're jetting all over the globe to support our clients. And I would just, in terms of advice, I would say that what really solidified our ability to reduce our emissions and get to a net zero carbon neutrality goal was also the top-down commitment, and the fact that our CEO Carmine DeCibio, you know, really said, we're going to meet our net zero goal. And, you know, offsetting is going to become a default for our carbon business travel emissions, but that's not the end goal. Right, so offsetting is a great means to, to mitigate climate risk in the short to medium term. But we need to think differently about how we engage with clients. So how do you guys as students who are international? I was an international student myself. In other ways, offset your emissions, and to think about embedding that into the cultural mindset of St. Andrews students and faculty, and the principal setting really the tone from the top that we're going to, this is important for society beyond St. Andrews.
Thank you so much, Lucy. If we move on to Salvatore now.
Well, I had the opportunity when I was living in the border region between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. I was on the board of directors for the last Mesoamerican dry forest conservation area, so about 200,000 hectares of dry tropical rainforest with different ecosystems and biomes. And that area became a UNESCO heritage site, not just because of the natural interest in the flora and fauna, but also because of the very innovative management framework that was set up. And basically you had, back in the, let's say, the 40s and 50s, you had ranchers, so cattle ranchers who used to burn and take away the forest that was there, hunt the fauna, and then use the flatlands to, to build their cattle ranches. That was reversed in a very visionary policy, but also with a very well-organized local community around it. That's persisted, and it's been developed on to this day, and it's actually influenced not only the national biodiversity and conservation laws in the country, but also at a continental level. So in the American, let's say the Court of the Americas, the actual international jurisprudence that the American system, the different countries in the American continent follow in their constitutions and lawmaking. So these little projects at the local level, which you might think from a very bird's eye perspective, do have a very big impact later on if there is stakeholder engagement. So in your example, which sounds really terrific, I'd say that, well, the first group of stakeholders are the 1,500 people who make up the university student staff body, and you should have 1,500 godparents for each of those trees. And we don't need to go too far either, because Scotland and England as well, there are areas of temperate rainforest that need protection. We don't need to go to Borneo, Malaysia, Costa Rica, or anywhere like this. We can do things in the UK, and push with good stakeholder engagement of getting people involved, and try and think of something innovative to keep it going in time. Just like the alumni network at St. Andrews, we're constantly reminded that we should participate, and we're constantly invited to help out in different ways. So I think that there's quite a big community that could keep that a very nice project going.
That's very uplifting to hear. Thank you so much. If we move on to Ben now.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to maybe jump up from the the last line of your question, Deanna. Like it's only, you mentioned it's only gained momentum because students who created it are still at the university, if I remember correctly. And it's something that, so I was involved in the campus sustainability movement, both in my university in Malaysia as well as in St. Andrews. And that has always been, succession planning has always been a challenge for us. And I think one of the things that I learned over the years is that it's something that you have to confront, succession planning. So you're there for 4 years, but while you're there, you meet 3 new cohorts who come in your second, third, and fourth years. So how are you bringing those students in so that there is a kind of gradual handover? In my year, as part of my master's dissertation, I actually wrote a spin-off proposal for biodiversity policy. And a few months after I left, I understand that the estates office transition and so on were taking it further. I don't know where it's gone today or what's happened of it, but I still feel that everything that's ever done, is somehow still handed down, passed over in one form or another, and every successive generation of students carries on some of that spirit. And when I returned to Malaysia after returning from St Andrews, I actually handed my work over to a new generation of staff and students. And a year or two after that, the team successfully gained national heritage status for the secondary forest that emerged from the rubber plantation we were working in. So nowhere near as dramatic as the Costa Rican UNESCO heritage sites there, but Salvatore said, sometimes even what appears as like a normal forest or an ecosystem, with enough support from the community and interest, can become something really special and powerful. And so I would say that, there's this quote I remember from a member of the local community who said the methods may change, but the mission continues. And as long as you maintain that link, have that conversation, bring your alumni back. You're in St Andrews for 4 years, but you never really leave, right? You're always part of this eternal body, 600 years and then some. Yeah.
Those are really, really insightful comments. Thank you very much. I like the idea of top-down commitment. We definitely do have that. I mean, the staff at St Andrews have been so incredibly supportive about making this St Andrews Forest a reality that it's really, really been inspiring. They were on a call with us for 2 hours yesterday in the evening. So that's something, again, so unique to St Andrews. Obviously, the management framework, really important. And then succession planning. Again, these are all things that I definitely will bring back to the team as well. Now, I really want to ask you more questions on St Andrews and especially about our sustainability strategy of net zero carbon emissions by 2035. But instead, to make better use of our time, I'm just going to quickly go back to careers themselves. So I want you, if it's possible, all to just go through why you love your work and what it is about the field or the sector that you work in that is so compelling. So if we start with Ben this time, go on to Salvatore and then Lucy.
Wow, that's that's not an easy question at all. I know, we had a few days to kind of think about this, but I think I've always been, at least, for me, my sector and field, which is a mix of, environmental conservation, sustainable urbanization, and now intergovernmental development. I think I've always been an explorer at heart. So this really started out, looking at the wildlife in my suburban neighborhood, tadpoles in drains and, insects in the house and what have you. And just this curiosity about learning new things and meeting new people. And I think with urban ecology and biodiversity, I've always taken a great pleasure in, showing people the beauty and wonder of sometimes what's right under our noses. So that kind of keeps me going on a daily basis, the sense that there's something new to discover every day. And although at UNDP now I spend a lot less time outdoors, I have been interacting a lot with the other 90 accelerator labs worldwide. We call ourselves the world's fastest and largest learning network on development challenges. And it's something I didn't expect, a huge step up from the master's cohort that had 17 nationalities represented. It was really mind-blowing at that time. So I think curiosity and the sense that there's always something new is what I enjoy the most. Thanks.
Well, yeah, this is also a very nice question, Deanna, and I'd have to start by saying, as a lifelong scout, BP Baden-Powell said, "Try to leave the world a better place than you found it." So whether that means cleaning up after yourself where you go out, or trying to make a change in your local community, or taking part in advocacy, or writing research proposals, policy documents, and negotiating the rulebook of the Paris Agreement. I mean, it's something that's a transversal value through the different stages of my career, and I say that's why I can't say that I can't love it more. As a father of 2 children, it's not just for my generation, it's for the rest of the world. Mother Nature has taken care of us for hundreds of, let's say, thousands of years so far. And now we have a very important challenge right now on our table, in our in tray. Should be a global unifying project. And I mean, is there anything more important than ensuring that we all have clean water, clean air, and good quality of nutrition? I think that that's it for me, to be honest.
For me as well, Salvatore, I would say that in addition to that, that purpose that really kind of grounds me in the work that I do in sustainability is the far-reaching impact that we can have as sustainability professionals. I mean, I'm a true believer in effective altruism, which advocates using evidence and reasoning to determine the most effective way to benefit others. And with my work at EY, I have this incredible ability to influence these very powerful organizations who have substantial resources to be better, to treat their employees better, to serve their communities better, invest their money in businesses that actually protect the planet and its people. And it's fascinating to me to work with companies day in and day out, and to, at the end of an engagement, to see that they've changed the way that they develop products. They're working on carbon-free or coal-free, pharmaceutical products, or they have invested or divested from certain businesses that just don't serve the people on the planet that we live on. So for me, it's the very compelling part of being a sustainability professional is the impact, what you can see in real time in your own lifetime.
These are really, really great answers to hear. Thank you so much. It all seems that, I mean, your maybe natural curiosity bounded with the care that you want towards your children in the future, the impact that you're having in wider global business and local communities. That definitely is at the heart of it all, and you all seem very inspired by it. So I was hoping that the next question we could maybe discuss, you could bring up maybe 1 or 2 case studies of a specific project in your time during your jobs that you'd like to share with us, essentially, that might influence some more students to go in that direction. Lucy, if we start with you this time, and then we'll move to Ben and then Salvatore.
Great question, Deanna, and thank you. I'd love to chat about a recent project that I've been on with the World Economic Forum, and it goes back to Salvatore's point on systems thinking and change. So we actually, believe it or not, we had the big 4 in accounting, so that's EY, PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, they all came together. These are, outright competitors, and they came together to work with the World Economic Forum to help corporates, to help the world come up with a way to measure their sustainability performance and report on it. And really, they catalyzed a global harmonization or convergence of international sustainability reporting standards. And it was just incredible to be a part of that, to work with a team of people that completely believed in sustainability and the need for better transparency across global organizations. And we came up with, what are the 30 reporting component metrics that will enable companies to transparently convey and communicate what is their impact on society, on the environment, and communicate that to investors, to everyday people who are very curious to understand, well, what impact is that company having on the environment, good or bad? And so it was just an incredible project to be on and to see how the ecosystem work together to come up with what is now, hopefully going to be an international standard for sustainability reporting.
Thanks, Lucy. So I think it's my turn. I think mine goes in a rather different direction from that. It kind of happened that there was this project where we kind of did an environmental, biodiversity impact assessment in a residential area, and I think Well, where it kind of echoes that is also when we talk about, Lucy, what you mentioned about measuring, impact and looking at ways to report, what matters. And what we noticed was that even though this was a residential area, housing area, what happened was that houses had been vacated for a number of years, and then you had lots of biodiversity coming in, trees that had just grown much larger than you'd expect in the city. And it kind of gave us a different sense of what was possible in urban neighborhoods and in urban space. And I think, from an ecological standpoint, that really challenged certain notions of permanence, certain notions of like binary choices, like, do we develop it this way, or do we leave it as a forest? Can we have a bit of both? And I'm just going to link that back to one experience that I had in St. Andrews, and it's the one that's in this background, where we were kind of replanting some trees that from a site that was going to be redeveloped in the university. And I think it just speaks to how a lot of times when we work in sustainability and environmental sustainability, there's a lot of uncertainty and impermanence. But it's kind of riding that wave rather than saying, do we have to make this decision for the next 50 years, which is good. But if we can't, can landscapes change? Can the relationship between communities and space, also kind of evolve with that? And nature is so much more resilient in some ways than we are. And I think if we can learn a couple of things, I think that's one of the more significant experiences. Over to you, Salvatore.
I'd say that some of the skills that I honed at St. Andrews at university, my first university experience, such as the capacity and the confidence to assess very, very significant amounts of data in a very short period of time, like Lucy mentioned earlier, as part of her historian background as well, just like me, and the ability to build up and, let's say, development of a compelling argument for yourself, and then put it to the test with your peers who have had similar opportunities as yourselves, sometimes more, sometimes less. This kind of skill set, I've used that on a number of occasions. So in a very high intense environment, whether in business development or in the public and social sphere. So, for example, I think one of the, let's say, the most intense experience that I had, where I remember that I really leant back on my training as a historian, classicist, and an academic, let's say, at St. Andrews, was when I was involved in the development of the Costa Rican National Energy Plan for the next 15-year period, named as one of the 50 experts by the President and the United Nations Development Programme. And that really was a test of how much information you can digest and develop, and how many proposals you can bring to the table, but at the same time keeping your feet on the ground and maintaining a lot of contact and dialogue with a huge spectrum of players. The opportunities that you have in St. Andrews when you're participating in the student staff committee meetings, or when you're on the board of a society, or when you're organizing for group projects in the lectures and courses themselves, or when preparing for exams, they all give you the skills to take them forward. And I called on them when I was in this position, when I was writing this, and it's a document that I knew would go down in history in the country, and then it would be studied outside as well. And it gives you a lot of perspective when you've had the opportunity to study a place like St. Andrews, where you are really surrounded, and it's a place that's infused with history and perspective. Changes might take a long time to happen, but they do have an impact at the end of the day. So the work that you put in today, you might not see the fruits immediately, but you will definitely add your grain of sand to the common effort. So I'd say that kind of skill set really was very, very notable for me.
These are really, really exciting experiences to hear. Thank you so much. I know that, so Lucy, before you mentioned how it was really interesting to have all of these businesses come together. I mean, and we can see that just from my own perspective as an international relations student. I mean, it was only in 2015 that all of the states in the world actually got together and made a consensus on climate change. So it really is excellent to hear that. Thank you so much. And I think this universal approach and the increase in actors getting involved is something that you've all referred to, and that's really, really interesting. So I'm going to bring our very final question back to St. Andrews and ask that, obviously, as I mentioned before, we now have a net zero carbon emissions strategy by 2035, and we were one of the first UK universities to do so. So it's very impressive. Now I want to ask you, sort of building on the last questions that we had, is have you found that there has been a rise in positive attitudes towards sustainability since your graduation, especially within recent years, and maybe if COVID's affected that slightly as well? Can I also ask that you just keep your answers to a minimum of 1 minute each, just so that we can then have enough time after. So if we start with you first, Salvatore, and then over to Lucy, and then Ben.
Okay, so you started the countdown, Deanna. So let's say from where I'm, from my standpoint, I've seen a massive change. When I started university in 2004, graduated 2008, the first time round, I never considered a career in sustainable development. It was a fringe topic, I'll confess. It was a thing on the, one might have had an environmental awareness or an ecological or some kind of love or passion or hobby, such as scouting, for example. But really, as a career option, it really seemed to be fringe. I've seen that change humongously in my career, and what I see now, let's say when I'm working right now with policymakers and negotiators and these delegations at the UNFCCC, they find, so you have a mix with scientists and policymakers, and both of them say that this challenge that we face now, the sustainable development challenge in all of its facets, is much too important just to leave to one set of people, such as lawmakers in nation states or federations like the USA or like the EU. And at the same time, the policymakers and the lawmakers say this is much too important just to leave to the scientists who don't know about the problems of the people. Business people say this is much too important to leave to them or them. So I see a lot of changes and a much more, let's say, much more enriching discussion than a few years ago when it wasn't in vogue. And I remember some of my, let's say, very early advocacy outside of, let's say, professional life, some early advocacy in more of an academic and project management sphere. It really wasn't the hot topic, and it wasn't something that people warmed to very quickly. So what I see now is a great environment and a great opportunity to build on the sensitivity in the general public and at all of these different cross-party levels.
Thanks, Salvatore. I would agree on that, and just add very quickly that I think COVID-19 has also accelerated the growth in this field, and at least I saw that myself in over the last 12 months. The number of requests that we have coming from corporations. How do we tackle sustainability, ESG? So COVID has really accelerated and accentuated the climate crisis that we have, and really bringing together, if we can tackle COVID, if companies can come or countries can come together, can we come together as well on climate?
So I'm also going to echo Lucy on that point. I think after last year, we know advocates and scientists have been warning us for decades. The risk of zoonoses and things like that. But now it's about practicalities, and corporates, business, everyone's asking not if or should we, but how. And I think spending most of the year cooped up at home, Netflix can only take you so far, right? People are starting to ask real questions about how cities are designed, for instance. I came to St. Andrews at the time, so very different from Salvatore. Sustainable development was already a popular topic. I mean, there's a master's program on it. But when I did my undergraduate studies in Malaysia, I do see a huge change because in my time, people questioned the course I did, ecology, and within the next 10 years, students were taking it intentionally. People wanted to study these things because they knew that there was a way to make a change with that knowledge. So yeah, I think, I don't know what the next 10 years is going to look like though. But definitely looking back the last 10 or more, there is a marked change.
Great, thank you all so much, and for keeping them short as well. That's really excellent. I think just from a current undergraduate perspective, you're all, like the three of you are so inspirational, and you really are an embodiment of what I think a St. Andrews student is. So it's really great to see that, I know, my future career could be sort of mirroring the amazing things that you guys have been doing. I'm going to pass back now to Karen, who will give her concluding thoughts.
Oh, let myself down there with the mute button. Drat. I think it's fantastic, and I just wanted to take a note, and we just crept a little bit further on there because the conversations that were going were just fantastic. And I just wanted to note that we have had a couple of great questions into the chat box. So what I will do is make sure that we get a response from our panel, and we will pass it on to the guests that have kindly popped some questions into the chat, just so that we're not holding everybody up today. But we absolutely welcome the questions that have been popped into the chat. So rest assured we will respond to those, which is great. So I just want, we could just keep going, couldn't we? That was excellent. I just want to say fantastic, and rest assured everybody that's here today, we're already in talks from some of the great information that the panel and Deanna have already shared with us even before today for events that we can host next. So it's just triggered lots of imagination and lots of next steps, which is super. Please note that there's going to be lots of links heading into the chat box for lots of what I'm about to mention, but also for our students and alumni up to 3 years out, events, jobs, internships, and how to connect with a careers advisor. Please click on Career Connect. Just to let you know, I don't know if Lucy knows this, but there's an event on the horizon that is the EY Ideation Climate Clinic that's coming up. Of any students that are here, there's only so many places on it, so please do watch on Career Connect. It's going to be launched soon, and we'd love to see you joining up to that, obviously with all the ideas that can be created and built on around there. So a big thank you today to our panel, Salvatore, Lucy and Ben, for giving their time and experiences. It was just terrific. And thank you to Deanna and our development team for all their hard work. Development will be working long and hard into the weekend as well to support all our alum that are coming back to us virtually, which is just great. And please don't hesitate to sign up to the quiz and other events, and hopefully watch the talent show that's on offer this weekend. I hear all about our talented alum. So we'll see who wins that moving forward on Sunday. If I can end that, we're always keen to engage with our alumni, whether it's through our mentoring and experience programs. Coffee Connect has just started. We've done 2 run-throughs and it's going strong, which is super. And work shadowing, but also skills workshops, internships and graduate opportunities. We love to hear from you. Our students always gain such a lot, especially so in the last year. And feedback from our involved alumni has been great too. So we look forward to really many more connections. And we thank you again. Thank you everybody for attending. Thank you to our panel, Deanna, development. And from a sunny Scotland, we can say hope the sun shines on you all this weekend, and take care as ever. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.